If you ask a woman why she gets the implants or the lip fillers or the 3-inch eyelashes, she will almost certainly tell you that she does it for herself, that it just makes her feel good. Men, however, naturally assume that they are the target audience and at the same time generally find these trends ridiculous. So we have a paradox here. We're witnessing an explosion in aesthetic trends that men criticize as failed attempts to capture their gaze, while women insist that male preference is completely irrelevant. So, who is right here, and why is this happening? To understand this, we need to look away from the makeup counter and look at the schoolyard. If two boys get into a shove-in match on a school playground, they are immediately sent to the principal's office, suspended, and told that their aggression is a symptom of the patriarchy. But if two girls systematically destroy a third girl's reputation over the course of 6 months through whispers and exclusion, till the point where that girl has to change schools, adults often just throw up their hands and call it drama. Over the last 50 years, we've completely pathologized male competition. We've designed our schools, our corporate HR departments, and our culture to penalize the way men compete. But in doing so, we've remained completely blind to the female battlefield. If you spend any time reading about evolutionary psychology or listening to internet commentary online, you hear endlessly about two things: male male competition, men fighting for status and resources, the stereotypical patriarchy or toxic masculinity narrative, or on the other hand, you hear about female mate choice, women selecting the winners, the stereotypical gold digger narrative. But this leaves out a massive piece of the puzzle. Women aren't just sitting by idly and passively on the sidelines waiting to choose the victor. They compete fiercely with each other, just as men do. The only difference is that their body count is measured in ruined reputations instead of broken noses. The Mean Girls phenomenon is not a product of Western culture or high school cliques or the patriarchy, for that matter. According to researchers like Dr. Tracy Valencourt and the late Dr. Ann Campbell, it is a selection pressure that's older than language itself. But female competition looks drastically different from male competition. Why? Dr. Campbell coined this framework called the staying alive theory. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, males are biologically expendable for reproduction. A tribe can still survive if it lost a few men to a hunt or to a fight or even to war. Because of this selection pressure, males evolved to be able to engage in high risk, overt competition, physical combat, direct confrontation, visible hierarchy. But a mother's survival was paramount for the infant's survival and consequently the survival of the tribe. In early human history, an orphaned infant was a dead infant. Women had to compete just as fiercely for resources and high status mates, but they had to do so using low risk strategies to ensure that they survive in order to raise their children. As a result, female competition evolved to be covert. Relational aggression, reputational sabotage, gossip, ostracization, and maybe most famously, passive aggression. It's a smart, highly evolved, and lethal survival strategy. If you can destroy your rival's reputation within the tribe, you eliminate her as competition without ever having to risk a physical scratch. Now, fast forward to the modern day. We've built an entire society, including schools and corporate environments, around police and overt aggression. Rightfully, zero tolerance policies in schools are laser focused on physical altercations and loud dominance displays. Corporate HR guidelines are strictly written to punish direct confrontation. Because male competition is so visible, it is easily regulated penalized and eventually pathologized, even in its more harmless forms. A whole generation has grown up being taught that winning is bad because it requires overt competition and it makes the loser feel bad. As the author Richard Reeves points out in his book of Boys and Men, boys are suffocating in environments where their natural competitive drive is being labeled as toxic masculinity. There's a glaring loophole here. By being so fixated on the loud, obvious stuff, we have accidentally given the covert female aggression and competition a completely free pass, even when it's being actively destructive. We've essentially made passive aggression the most effective, unpunishable weapon in the modern workplace because it relies entirely on plausible deniability. You can get fired for yelling in a meeting or even play fighting, but you can't get fired for a subtle eye roll or a weaponized rumor or accidentally leaving your rival off of the calendar invite. It's hostility that's cloaked as innocence. Women are able to engage in ruthless status jockey and combat that perfectly bypasses modern institutional guidelines. This is part of the reason why corporate environments are becoming increasingly averse to traditional competition as they try to accommodate for more women. We're squashing male competition while female competition operates unimpeded in the shadows. Which brings us back to the eyelashes, the lip fillers, and the revealing outfits. To understand how this relates to the covert female form of aggression, look at primate allogrooming. Macaques and baboons will spend hours meticulously picking through each other's fur long after the physical dirt is gone. They're not doing this to keep clean anymore. They are trading in a social currency. This time consuming performance is meant to signal their virtue, to map out their alliances, and to secure their rank within the troop. The modern beauty industry is simply a hyper evolved version of this same social grooming. Using a little makeup can mimic health and youth, which is a simple way to get a man's attention. But as women start to compete with each other for status in the female hierarchy, that same signaling goes into overdrive. When men look at the super long nails, the extreme lip injections, and the revealing outfits, they often express mockery and disbelief. They don't seem to like it at all. And they're right because men are no longer the target audience. Other women are. When a woman says, "I am doing this for myself, not for men," that's my best female impression. She's not necessarily lying, but she's subconsciously saying that I am doing this for my status within the female hierarchy. It's an arms race of aesthetics where the goal is to outsignal your peers. It's moved entirely past male preference and into a separate, deeply complex female social world. The fallout of these covert tactics is where the line between intra-female competition and aggression finally disappears. We actually have no problem seeing this duality in male competition. Society is so hyper-focused on the dark side of male competition that we have become increasingly intolerant of it, even in its most benign forms. We routinely pathologize young boys roughhousing or men engaging in competitive banter as toxic because we are terrified that it will escalate into physical threat. Yet, when it comes to the covert skill set polished by female competition, our threat detection systems go completely dark. The exact social precision honed by intra-female competition is the exact same toolkit used to gracefully isolate rivals. To understand the true lethality of this invisible weapon, look at what happens when it's turned on a man. While the female aggressor is shielded and often praised as having high standards or knowing her worth, the man caught in the crosshairs is often left completely defenseless. This warfare is uniquely devastating because it doesn't just bypass his physical strength, it actively weaponizes it against him. First, men generally lack the verbal agility to articulate a subtle social strike, much less return fire with the same invisible precision. Second, he's trapped in a completely asymmetrical burden of proof. If he, as the one expected to be the stoic protector, complains about some psychological slight, he is often judged as being petty and weak. But if his mountain frustration triggers even a hint of his natural overt anger, she can instantly point to the fact that he's a man to cast herself as the innocent victim. Society demands undeniable evidence of her covert destructiveness, yet instinctively protects her from the mere suggestion of his physical intimidation. He's left fighting a ghost that he wasn't built to see. His valid instincts are dismissed by a world that only recognizes a victim when they've been mauled by a physical predator. Think about the recent viral debate asking women if they would rather the man or the bear.
Bear. Man is scary.
With a bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you like fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
Oh, 100% a bear, which is like terrifying to say, but
Definitely a bear. Some men are very scary out there.
A bear.
I would say a man.
7 out of these 8 women said they would rather the bear. The reason this debate is so endless is because both sides are mathematically correct. They're just tracking different statistics. The feminist narrative is tracking the per capita reality. Statistically, men produce exponentially more casualties, more human casualties than bears. The manosphere is tracking the pair encounter reality. Because we survive billions and billions and billions of perfectly safe interactions every single day with men, the mathematical lethality of one random male encounter is microscopic compared to the reality of stumbling onto an apex predator. Both sides are fiercely debating the overt physical threat. But our cultural obsession with this particular topic reveals that our lie detector is fundamentally broken. Our obsession with the bear is like refusing to fly on a plane out of fear of the rare, spectacular plane crash, only to hop on a motorcycle that is 10,000 times more lethal. We would rather grip onto the handlebars of our own destruction and embrace the illusion of control than trust the safety of what we can't see. Evolution optimized us for the sudden, visible predator while leaving us completely blind to the quiet, statistical lethality. We prioritize the spectacle because for a million years, the loudest threat was the only one that mattered. Now, that same instinct acts as a decoy. It keeps us locked onto the overt threat while the quiet human casualties of the covert warfare remain in the shadows. It also reveals a massive, measurable cognitive blind spot. Psychologists call it the women are wonderful effect. It's become completely socially acceptable to have baseline hostility towards men, which is why a recent UK poll found that young women are at least 3 times more likely to hold active negative views towards men than vice versa. This cognitive bias is so powerful that even when modern data is suggesting that women are just as likely to initiate intimate physical violence at comparable rates to men, if less lethal due to the obvious physical differences, society completely ignores it. If we are blind to female physical aggression, we are completely defenseless against their psychological warfare. Understanding this invisible battlefield shatters two of the most common gender narratives that we see today. First, it exposes the manosphere's obsession with hypergamy. They assume that every aesthetic choice that a woman makes is a calculated play for a man's attention, completely blind to the fact that just as often, women are fiercely competing with each other to secure their ranks. We're so obsessed with the male gaze that we miss the lethality of the female gaze. Second, it destroys the modern feminist framing that women exist in this harmless vacuum, that every aesthetic choice that women make is pure self expression, and that any form of aggression from women is yet another byproduct of the patriarchy. The mean girl isn't just a cultural construct, she is the apex predator of the female evolutionary landscape. The most important takeaway from all of this is that the battlefield is exhausting. The same New Statesman poll that I mentioned earlier didn't just show a gender divide, it also showed that young women are significantly more deeply pessimistic about their economic futures as well as society at large than their male peers. And is it any wonder? Just as men are burdened with the pressure to be the stoic provider and protector, women are trapped in a never ending, unacknowledged psychological arms race with one another. Social media has only weaponized this covert aggression, given it a 24/7 global platform. Because we recognize the dark side of male competition, we've built guardrails to handle it as imperfectly as they might be. We teach boys how to be sportsmanlike. We teach them how to shake hands after a game. We teach them how to be graceful losers and humble winners. But because we pretend that female competition doesn't exist, we've left an entire generation of girls to fight a psychological battle with no rules of engagement, no off ramps, and no guidance. It's become taboo and even sexist to even have anything critical to say about the excesses of the female temperament. Competition is not a toxic male trait. It's a gender neutral trait utilized differently by both genders on average. And like any other trait, it is necessary in moderation. Until we acknowledge how both halves of the population can abuse their traits, we